scars that has led me here. Centuries of torture have prepared me for this moment. I am destroyed. But I am stronger than death. I am reborn. I am a Soul Reaver.
There is enough cancelled and cut content in the Legacy of Kain series to create several games, and this is one of them. Welcome to Dead Games No One Played, Legacy of Kain Dead Sun Edition. 'Twas the year 2013 when, in the month of June, as it is now, we learned of something very important relating to the Legacy of Kain series, namely that it was dead as the sun would be in its last game, Dead Sun. Sure, we did get one more Legacy of Kain-ish game in the form of Nosgoth, but to those who appreciated the series, Nosgoth was as much a Legacy of Kain game as Primal Carnage, a game with dinosaurs and humans that have the kind of exact same gameplay and a bunch of similar classes and attacks. Nosgoth, by the way, was made by Psyonix, a studio that created Rocket League. And why would anyone make a multiplayer-focused video game about human hunters and vampires in the world of Nosgoth that didn't have anything to do with the actual plot or feeling or story or anything that actually resembled Legacy of Kain? For that, we need to go further into the past, many years ago, around the year 2009, when Square Enix bought a struggling Eidos Interactive and turned it into the powerhouse that we know today, the one that constantly fires people because selling 4 million copies is just not meeting the goals or expectations of sales, and yet spending countless millions to remake Final Fantasy XIV somehow does not warrant any sort of self-awareness. It was around that time that someone came up with a bright idea of resurrecting the Legacy of Kain series. And I mean it. The Legacy of Kain series is a great series, and having more games in it is a good idea. Though there is kind of a bit of a problem here from the get-go because it wasn't being made by Crystal Dynamics, and Amy Hennig hasn't been at Eidos for a very long time. And the last time other people were left to their own volition to make a Legacy of Kain game, we got Shakan 2, loosely skinned as Blood Omen 2, a game that I will constantly compare to being hit in the crotch repeatedly. And yet, the idea wasn't to just cash in on the Legacy of Kain series and make some throwaway game. They actually tried to do it right. At first, it didn't have a big budget, it was just a couple of people working on it, developing it, and then they put more money into it, and the end result looked like almost every other open world action game of the time and of the present, and every open world action game since Assassin's Creed and Arkham Asylum broke sales records. A game where you ran around climbing things, punching things in Dance Dance Revolution combat mode. Though, to be fair, here you could actually throw your enemies quite a lot, so at least it may have been fun, unlike Shadow of Mordor's combat system, which wasn't. And I'm making the Shadow of Mordor comparison here because these two games are very much similar, because in both of them you play as a humanish character that's no longer human. They're dead, but when they die, they became intertwined with some other entity. Not an elf here, but a vampire, the very vampire that killed you. A vampire with blue skin, a vampire with wings. things. A vampire that feasts upon souls. A soul reaver. Now the concept is very much in line with the Legacy of Kain, namely with Soul Reaver itself, where you had Raziel becoming intertwined with his own soul, which was the Soul Reaver at the time. It was a concept that could have worked, especially since the game was set within Nosgoth. It was actually proper Nosgoth, but in the future. It was decades, maybe centuries away from the ending of Defiance, in a world that we would see as the result of Kain's decisions after the end of that game. What Kain did with that hope left to him by Raziel. And in this game we would see that humanity, for a time, flourished. Civilizations were rebuilt, communities spread through the entire world, and Nosgoth did not die. It prospered for a while. And yet vampires were still around. They did not go extinct. Now you may be wondering, well, what happened to the Hilden in all of this? Well, that's one of the bad parts of Dead Sun. This was a reboot. This basically just paid lip service to the Legacy of Kain series. There would be some characters from the series in Dead Sun, but they just be there in the background, waving at you, except for one, the Elder God, who would be, from what I understood, again the main focus in terms of antagonist, though sadly without the benefit of the voice of the late great Tony J. And there would be mystery in this game, much as there was mystery in most of the other Legacy of Kain games. Why had these two characters, this vampire named Kain and the human named Asher, bonded together like this? Why is the son of this world dead or dying or not really all that groovy? Why are people, again, on the brink of extinction because children are rare? And why are the few ones that are being born sacrificed to some deity in the hopes of salvation? As reboots go, it put up a couple of interesting ideas, and it was going to revolve around the concept of religion, much as the Legacy of Kain series for most of its existence revolved around the idea of fatalism, of there being no choice to your actions, of the future being planned out, and every action you take just making things go forward down that predefined path. Would this story have actually been good? Would the people at Climax Studios be able to write up a story just as good as all the other Legacy of Kain games apart from Blood Diamond 2 because that one sucked had? I have no idea. I have not seen a full script of this story, and we probably won't see one for many years because everything is still under NDA, and whatever is on the web about it was leaked and was pieced together from various portfolios of artists. One thing I can tell you for certain is that the dialogue isn't what you would call at the same caliber as Soul Reaver as the other ones, apart from Blood Omen 2 because that one sucked. Blood Omen and Soul Reaver had a Shakespearean style to them. There was a sort of, I would say, poetic passion in the way they spoke. You could feel that every word they said came from the soul. It felt larger than life and the delivery was spot on. Here, it was okay. Though to be fair, the only thing we saw was a vertical slice, which may not even feature stuff we'll even see in the game. Not that there is a game anymore. But still, it wasn't what you would call the same kind of dialogue that just defined this franchise. Apart from Blood Diamond 2 because that one sucked. And to be honest, I wasn't all that fond of the Nosgoth they showed in the vertical slice either. It didn't look like Nosgoth. It didn't feel gothic. It didn't feel like an oppressive, broken, dying, withering husk choking the life out of whatever is left upon its surface. That's Nosgoth. Nosgoth isn't just a place, it's a feeling, it's an emotion. And yeah, this was a Nosgoth that went through a hunky-dory, everything's tutti-frutti period, and then started again descending into madness, and maybe we would have seen the depths of depravity it could go to further on into the game, but not in that vertical slice. We did not see any of that. We did, however, see the shifting mechanics, something that Solar Reaver used to great effect, and that this game repurposed with one additional feature. When you travel into the spirit world, you would be traveling into a version of Nosgoth that the souls of the dead remembered. You would see their souls not just as glowing blobs that you could eat, but as actual representations of the people that lived there, reenacting moments from their life. You would be seeing ghosts. And this actually makes sense. I mean, you're gonna eat their souls, they may as well tell you something before they get snatched up, or you may just see echoes of what their souls left imprinted on that world. It makes a lot more sense than the ghosts you see in The Division, because who the hell plans holographic imaging sensors to capture random stuff on the street? What I'm saying is that it fit, and you could actually change on a whim, like you could do in, well, you would have done in Soul Reaver 1 if you had consumed Kain, but they cut that a bit out, and as you sort of could in the sequels when you could just possess stuff and re-emerge through them. In terms of stuff you did apart from fighting in the Dance Dance Revolution with Superpowers mode, you also had a sort of parkour element where you would run around, jump, grab onto stuff, you could climb, you could glide, you could fly. Well, yeah, technically flying is a different method of transportation of movement than parkour, but it was in there, and it looked kind of okay. Nothing about the reveal of gameplay, reveal of the story, I would say was truthfully objectionable from the perspective of a Legacy of Kain fan. There wasn't anything that made me burn with rage, well, apart from the game Nosgoth itself, which, not saying I'm glad they shut it down, but it was an affront to what the franchise meant. And if completed, Dead Sun may have been an okay reboot. It at least looked in the vertical slice like more of an interesting game than that Star Wars 1313 Pop-A-Mole cover shooter with nothing to it that everybody was standing on their tail for a while ago. And that vertical slice would not have been an absolute lie. This was a game that was in development for 3 years. It had content in it. It had reached a point where it could have been considered playable. It wasn't just a tech demo. But sadly, Square Enix decided that this game was not worth the effort. It's Square Enix. They somehow decided that the Breach mode of Mankind Divided was worth the effort and not actually making the complete game and then murdering the franchise. What I'm getting at is that Square Enix makes strange decisions that come back to bite them in the pooper. Nosgoth was to be the multiplayer component of Dead Sun. It was completely separate, so when Dead Sun was cancelled, Square Enix actually went on with releasing it and then pulling it because no one really cared for it that much. Will we ever have a new Legacy of Kain game? Who knows? Considering that Square Enix is selling off Hitman, it's shelved Deus Ex, it probably will not do anything soon with Thief. It's gonna try and do something more with Tomb Raider. It's kind of out of franchises. And as you know, making something original is anathema in the industry, so odds are we will be seeing a new Legacy of Kain sometime in the coming years. And probably this one will get cancelled too, because again, there are more cancelled games in the Legacy of Kain series than there are actual released games in the Legacy of Kain series. This has been Dead Games No One Played, and I encourage you again to give the Legacy of Kain series a go. Yeah, even Blood Omen 2 if you wanna be disappointed. It's not that it's a terrible game as a whole, but play the other ones and you will see it as not being all that good. Goodbye.